Well, we are live here with Coffee with Humans with my new friend, William Glass. William, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Thanks, Jason. Excited to be here today.
Well, I'm excited to have you. I noticed you have a background behind you. Is that New York City, maybe?
It is, yeah. It's the Flatiron Building. You only get half of it because of how low this desk is, but yeah, it's a great IKEA purchase that has been gifted down from people that have moved out of apartments that I'm friends with. So it has now landed in my apartment.
I gotcha. Okay, so an IKEA purchase that's been gifted down. That's good. So it at least has some meaning behind it for you.
It does. It does. I carried this thing on the train, and that was fun. Just
wow,
carrying it because it's quite large. It's quite large. If you can kind of tell. Let's see, I guess I can tilt the camera. You know, it covers up the whole. Yeah. So.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
You get a lot of looks. You get a lot of looks carrying that on the train.
So on the train, New York City background. I'm in Northern Illinois. Where are you located?
So I'm in Queens.
Queens.
But I'm originally from Alabama. Was in Florida for a while. Went to college there. Lived in Thailand for a year. So have bounced around. But right now, New York City is what I call home.
Hey, that's fun.
Yeah. So where in Illinois?
Outside of Chicago by about 60 or 70 miles west.
West. Okay. So you're not. Yeah. I've got a friend who in college, he was from Munster in Indiana. And I'd always make fun of him and be like, you're not even in the same state. Cause he'd always say he was from Chicago. So I always make fun of him. So just making sure you're not from Munster.
I am not from Munster, Indiana. Although that area tends to wrap together so much that if there weren't some imaginary line set forth years ago, it would be called Chicago.
Yeah.
Or a suburb of Chicago.
That makes sense. So.
It's Chicago slowly creeping out and gathering up everything around it.
Yeah. That urban sprawl.
Welcome. This is exciting. I'm curious, why did you choose to click the button to have coffee with me?
Yeah. So anyone that's willing to have strangers essentially sign up and have conversations with them has got to be interesting themselves. So that was one of my thoughts is I'd like to meet someone that is very open, talking to just anyone that essentially will sign up and is willing to go live on a bunch of different platforms and just have a conversation without any pretext. I think that's pretty cool. So I was just excited to get to meet you and just talk to someone else looking at your background. I think there's some interests that align in terms of how you're supporting businesses and entrepreneurs and things like that. So that's what made me click.
I will accept the moniker of interesting person. I hope. I think I've lived an interesting life. I would think that my background would say so as well, but I've never lived in Thailand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now I would wait, but definitely a great place to live. Yeah. I spent a year over there. So I did, there's a program through the State Department called Fulbright. So I did that and taught English in rural Thailand. I was surrounded by rice paddies and sugarcane fields. And that was where I lived for a year. And it was really, really neat experience. Definitely opened up my eyes in terms of just one, how similar we are. And then also how you can adapt in terms of a very different culture, very different lifestyle. Didn't really make any money, but managed to save more money than probably most Americans do today, which is kind of funny.
Right.
I got paid $500 a month and managed to save, $1,000 by the end of the time I was there. So, just funny how you can adapt to life. And just when you think about standard of living and things like that, how that works. But yeah. So what would you say? Oh, go ahead, Jason. I was going to say, you liked the moniker of interesting person. I'm curious what you think is one of the more interesting things about you.
I love that you asked me a question. I always tell people, and I told you before the episode too, that you're welcome to ask me questions. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. And few people take me up on that. But this is great. So what's one of the more interesting things about me? I don't know if it's really I don't know if it's really interesting or not. How's this? But I love to do karaoke.
Ooh, okay.
I don't see that's not very interesting.
No, but are you a solo karaokeer? Do you like to have a partner and do duets? Like what's your style?
I have some songs that I do that I just know. So I'm the karaokeer that I will go out to karaoke, but I only sing songs that I can probably just nail. because I'm a reasonably good singer. And I also know that when I go into there, I kind of feel out the vibe and figure out what songs may or may not fit.
Okay.
So I like singing solos, but I tend to be asked by people to sing with them.
Interesting.
And so
okay.
there will be somebody there's inevitably somebody who's like, hey, do you want to do this song with me? And I'm like, maybe. What song is it? And then I go through and I try and listen to the song. So I'll actually sit there with my phone next to my ear, be listening to the song to try and see if I know it. Because the other interesting thing is, and this I get is not very interesting. I can go into something more interesting later, but I don't remember names of songs. I know the words. I probably know the tune. I definitely know the tune. I probably know the words or can learn them super fast and have no idea what the song name is, and sometimes no idea what the name of the artist is.
That makes it pretty hard to look up in the little karaoke books which song to sing then.
Well, it does. And that's why, so there's a couple different karaoke places in town. One has like an old, it's one computer not connected to the internet. And they have, the songs are all old. And I don't know why they won't connect to the internet or something like that. But then you get good DJs who they'll download the thing. They'll download any song you want, which is fun until they download the version that you didn't want. And then you just got to roll with it. And some people be like, stop the music. That's not the song I wanted. And I just roll with it. I'm just like, I'll figure it out, make it up. But I like to get other people to sing.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
I'm the instigator. If there's a person like, I can't sing, I'll be like, let's do it together. And then as they start singing, like I'll back away, and then just to get people out of their comfort zone.
No, I like that. Yeah. I think you definitely need an instigator when going to karaoke, because it's, you want everyone to sing, right? And you obviously want them to be comfortable, and, you don't want to scare someone and torment them, I guess, for the rest of their lives, scar them for the rest of their lives. But yeah, like if you're going to karaoke, get involved. So I like that.
Totally.
I like that.
Most people are too afraid. Well, I shouldn't say most people. That might be an exaggeration. Many people are too afraid to step out of their comfort zones to do something that they've been doing for, God knows how long. They've been singing in their shower for years. They've been singing in their car. They were singing in their car on the way over. And I'm pretty convinced that some people just need to be asked. And if you ask them, then they start to go, oh, okay, maybe I'll step into this with someone else. They just don't want to be alone. They don't like the idea of standing there alone with this hypothetical idea that somehow they're being inspected by everyone, and judged by everyone. And it might be true that they are being judged by everyone, but the benefit is that in most karaoke bars, no one's going to remember the next day who you are anyhow.
Exactly. No one's going to remember. And even if the person behind you is like Celine Dion or someone, right, they're going to be focused on that person next, and, their judgment of you will last five seconds, and they'll move on with their lives and worry about themselves singing. So
I did sing once though I started frequenting a place for karaoke. And a friend of mine who I've sung with for years in other situations in churches and that type of stuff. She and I sing this song, "The Prayer" by Andrea Bocelli and Celine Dion. Since you brought up Celine Dion, and it's in Italian.
Oh, okay.
And I can sing some bars in Italian. And so we got the Italian version. And so she's took off into Celine Dion mode, and then all of a sudden I started singing Italian, and her dad was filming it at the time. And we see this guy in our cell phone camera video, this guy sitting off at the bar, and he's just like drinking his beer. And he just like stares off because he's like, who the hell is singing Italian in a karaoke bar? It's so funny. It was just a blast.
That sounds like
unexpected.
So funny connection here. So one of the things that I spent a lot of time doing in Thailand was karaokeing. They love to karaoke.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And while I was there, so there was, so the school that I taught at was pretty much all female teachers, and there was maybe 5 male teachers, and there was only one under the age of like 65. And And so him and I connected as we were the only essentially like young male teachers there. And part of like us getting to know each other, and I call him older brother and he calls me younger brother, and like we're still connected. We send each other care packages all the time. But one of the requirements was that I had to learn a Thai song so that I could sing it in karaoke. And I'll tell you, that was one of the best decisions I made, because I could use that with my students to get their attention. It was like an incentive, like, let's hear the farang, the foreign teacher, like sing in Thai. Like that was motivating to them. So yeah, lots of karaoke. I only did it a couple times beforehand. My mom would always kind of drag me up when I was younger, because she liked to sing and would do karaoke, but she was also similar in the fact that she didn't want to do it by herself. So she'd bring me up so that way she could have someone else to play off of. But yeah, Thailand, you would fit in very well then, Jason. You would like it.
I don't know any Thai though. Like I know nothing about the language.
So
did you know before you went there?
No, I didn't know any Thai. So I learned the first month I was there. It was like, let's learn some basic teaching skills, because I'd also never taught. So let's talk about setting people up for success. So I'd never taught, didn't know the language. And yeah, so that's the first month, learned a little bit of Thai. And then the part of Thailand I was in had its own sort of accent and dialect. So I had to learn a little bit of that as well. But it fits well with singing, right? It's very tonal. So I think you'd be able to pick it up. The other thing is that they're really good at singing English songs. So you can go to a Thai karaoke place and you'll find English songs. So
that's great. Well,
yeah.
So you went from Florida to Thailand on the Fulbright program, right? Fulbright scholarship type thing.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Okay, and got paid nothing over, as by American standards, and then went back to New York.
Yeah. So I yeah, went back to New York. Went back to New York, though I did go back to Florida for a while. So I was in New York for about a month after I got back from Thailand, and then ended up getting a job down in Florida. My dad had moved down to Key West, and so there was an incentive for me to be able to get closer to Key West quicker, weather-wise and all that stuff, and just spending time with him. So yeah, so ended up in technology sales after that, and was in Fort Myers, Florida, and then in 2018, and that was for 2 or 3 years. And then 2018, I moved up to New York. So
how do you feel that your understanding of the world or of yourself, let's maybe deal with just yourself, but how do you feel that your understanding of yourself changed, having gone through such significant extremes from Thailand to New York City?
Yeah. So you asked about what would a title of the chapter of a book in my life be? And I said, why am I still running? And for some reason, as a kid, I kept wanting to go experience different things. I still wanted to be close to home, sort of, or like have a connection, but I was always running away from whatever it was to go try to find something. And I don't know what that was. It was a different experience, different lifestyle. So, went from, deep South Alabama to Orlando, Winter Park, Florida, which is its own sort of cultural shift in terms of everyone being from the Northeast, and then a lot of people international that were at the college that I went to, and then Thailand. And I was always just searching for something, and wasn't really sure what that was, but I think it had a lot to do with just figuring out who I was. So I was running away from who I was in a certain place. So who I was when I was in Alabama, who I was when I was in college, and who I was in Thailand. And I think that's what I've learned about myself in these different places, is that I figured out more of being comfortable in my own skin. William Glass, what does that mean? What do I care about? What are my values? And discovering that by seeing how other people interact with the world and live, and what they value. So that's sort of what I've learned throughout my experiences, and still a lot to be learned. So I don't want to pretend that I know exactly who I am, but I have a much better understanding.
So this idea of running from something or to something is pretty, I think, prevalent in most of our lives, that we all have this sense at some point in time, and I don't know if we ever settle down, this idea that we are moving. And it does seem that we either are moving away from something to escape it, or we're moving to something to become it. Have you resolved any of that in your travels?
I think so. Yeah. I like the way that you framed that, right? So running away or running to. And I think running too is a lot more exciting than running away, because you know where you're going, right? You have that goalpost, you've defined some things. And I would say that's what I've discovered is more of like what I'm actually running towards and what's important in my life. And a lot of that has to do with the relationships with people and, you know, friends, family, and just being there and showing up for them and spending time, right? You hear that kind of moniker that it's like the one finite resource that we have. And I think that's something that I've learned. And that's one of the things that I'm running towards is opportunities where I can be with the people that I love and care about more frequently. So
how does that work into what you're doing right now, which has something to do with financial literacy and emotions around money, and for our viewers and listeners, I think there's an important understanding here, which is I don't know you at all.
Yeah.
We met now 20 minutes ago, if that. And before our broadcast, we talked about almost nothing on purpose, because the whole point here is to just sit down, have a cup of coffee, in this case, virtually, with someone who becomes a friend at the end of this thing, in an effort to make the world a better place, to hear from other experiences and share. I'll steal somebody else's name for this, but the pool of meaning, the shared pool of meaning, where we get to dump our stuff into it and then circle it around and figure out what we want to take from it. So you're on some path around emotional or the emotions and finances and financial literacy. How does that work into what you're running to?
Yeah. So I'll actually start with what I ran away from. And so in, growing up, I love both my parents. They're the most supportive people and know that they love me 100%. But in 2008, when the housing crisis and bubble burst, their relationship burst along with it due to finances. They didn't have common goals, common language. They just didn't have, they weren't aligned. And, there's other things obviously in a relationship that are part of that, but that was one of the key things that kind of led to that. They're going their separate ways. And it really impacted me. I mean, at the same time as a millennial growing up, seeing financial crisis and everything else and all the people that lost jobs. And yet you see the bailouts of banks, and funny that we're now having this conversation as we're kind of coming out of and still dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. That really affected me. And I got really interested in personal finance. One, I'm an only child. I'm the only grandchild on both sides of the family. So at the end of the day, I'm probably going to be the last one standing, so to speak, and being able to take care of family, extended family, and wanting to put myself in the best position, because that's something that I see as a responsibility, but something that I want to own. And so at the time I was more running away from that, if that makes sense, and trying to figure out, well, how can I be, find out who I am in this context of the world and what I want to accomplish without thinking about this responsibility, which no one told me that I had to take on, but in the back of my mind, I've already taken it on. And so that was sort of my experience. And going to Thailand was, hey, if stuff hits the fan in the US, am I going to be able to survive for a year? That was my one goal out of college, was I want to be able to make sure that if crap hits the fan in the US, I can still live out there in the rest of the world. And I managed to prove that. And then I came back and I was like, all right, well, now I got to get started on this whole financial journey so that I can support everyone. And that's what led me into sales and trying to essentially find a job that would pay me what I felt I was worth, which I didn't think I was worth. I thought I was worth more than $40,000 or $50,000 a year. So I ended up in sales because it was the only job where you could have a commission and make more than that, at least with my just regular bachelor's degree. And I was starting to make progress on my own financial journey and setting aggressive goals and not always meeting them. In fact, most of the time, not meeting them, but still making progress and wanting to figure out why is this? And, there's a ton of tools and things out there. And that's really what got me interested in the emotional side of money and what drives me to want to actually go, put money away versus going out with friends tonight or going to, waste a bunch of money on something that I don't care about, like a brand new car, things like that. And seeing just how unhappy a lot of people are, that I wasn't alone in that, of spending on things that I didn't really care about and then feeling guilty because I'm not in the position that I want to be. and then using some sort of online shopping or something like that to then make myself feel better and just end up in this debt cycle, so to speak. So that's kind of the really long-winded answer, but that's what I'm running towards, is trying to help people figure out what it is that they really care about, and then have the knowledge and ability to actually achieve their goals. And unfortunately or fortunately, finances is always going to be a part of that. So yeah.
That's a pretty deep understanding. And it occurs to me that most people need some sort of fuel for their fire of their quote unquote why, right? Why do you do the thing that you do? And that leads many people forward. And some people who don't figure out their why just wander, it seems. Your why seems to be clarified at an awfully young age.
Well, I'd say having this conversation and more conversations like this, Jason, is actually really helpful, because no one's going to really ask you that. But when you sit down in a setting like this, where you're meeting someone for the first time on a live stream or a podcast or something like that, it's like, well, what are we going to talk about? And you start to sort through those things. So I think honestly, just having awesome conversations like this and what you're doing is a great way for people to start figuring that out for themselves. And I don't want to pretend that I've got it all figured out, because I definitely don't. But I'm getting clearer on what that why is. And I'm sure as my life changes and different things happen, that why will probably shift as well. But I don't know, what's been your experience in terms of finding your why? Jason, I'm curious to hear that.
Oh boy. This is good. I like this, that you are taking me up on the offer to ask me questions, because I don't typically, I'm pretty good at turning it back around. But I will resist that temptation. How's that?
Okay. I mean, yeah. How are you going to take it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I do business advisory work. And part of that is helping people protect themselves while growing their businesses. Because I have not always protected myself when I've grown my businesses, and that's not turned out so well. And so I have seen both great success and what I thought was terrible failure, epic failure, and have learned to, or am learning, how's that, to be resilient through both of those extremes, to pay that forward in some way. Part of why I do Coffee with Humans is that was launched in April of last year, because it seemed to me, my gut, what was going on in my spirit, let's say, my gut was that people were feeling disconnected. I was feeling disconnected. Other people were feeling disconnected, almost to the point of, it seemed, not sure what the word would be, but like despondency, almost like I'm so despondent here. And I determined that I wasn't going to let that feeling drag me backward. Instead, I was going to use that as energy to push off from that. And I thought, well, how could I make it easier to connect with other people? And so I simply, on a whim, in my gut, using whatever experiences and skills that I had gained up to that point, posted a post on LinkedIn and said, if you want to have coffee, I said, actually, I wrote there, I said, I'm going to have 52 coffees this year. If you want to have coffee with me, I'll have coffee with you. The only rule is no sales calls. I didn't give it a lot of thought. I just knew this is something I should probably do. And so I did. And off of that one post came a handful of coffees. I then recorded those and took these little 3 to 5 minute excerpts, threw those back online, and then got more and more and more and more. And before I knew it, I had recorded 70 or 80 calls with people. Before, I thought, wow, this is taking a lot of time to edit. And so I never did. I never edited them. And so I stopped for a little bit, and I retooled the whole thing and said, I need to make this easier on me. Mm-hmm. It's still contributing value to the world. I'm booked 2 or 3 months out. And that's basically a configuration of my my calendaring system. Mm-hmm. And then people engage. So I thought I'm going to continue to do this, and we'll see where it goes. And so after taking off maybe 2 months, I retooled the whole thing to be live. So I just click a button, as you've experienced, click a button, we go live. And then at the end, I click a button and it's done. And that's immediately out there. I can get it edited later, and I have. And it was just a way of offering people like yourself and like me, if you want to connect with somebody and just talk about whatever, I'm pretty convinced that if we intend to make it a meaningful time, it'll be a meaningful time. And if we're finding meaning as this microcosm of what's going on in the greater part of the world, there must be other people like us. And I'm just going to walk into that fully. I'm going to trust that that's true, and put it out there. And then that led to all sorts of things that I needed to think through and overcome in my own self to go ahead and do it. So that's where I ended up on my journey, and a handful of whys why I do the things I do.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, especially just around when you started in April, everything shut down. How long are we going to be in this? And being able to connect with people, because it's not like you're going to bump into people at events or at the grocery store or all these places. We lost that serendipitous interaction. So I love that.
And I felt like there was a lack of meaning, because we became fixated on one singular event, which granted, it's a big deal. It put the economies of the world their knees, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a blip on the radar of history. And I felt like there's got to be some way to reach deeper. And I thought, if I can bring myself to the table to open that space, there's got to be other people who will come to the table with me.
Yeah. What have you learned? I'm curious, what are some of the key takeaways from now having done this? It sounds like close to over 100 times. It sounds like at this point,
150 or 160 times now.
Yeah.
Something like that. Key takeaways. There is definitely a need for connection. Mm-hmm. People desire true connection. They don't actually want to talk about the things that they do as much as you think they do. Like their professions. We are more meaning than that. We have a depth of meaning to ourselves that transcends what we do, which was an inkling I had, and I thought, I'll just create the space and say that's what we do. The other thing is that I think one of the things I've really enjoyed about it is the similarities between people. I do believe that we are all very, very similar. And I've done my own fair share of traveling around the world, and people are much more the same than we are different. We are different on a superficial level, mm-hmm. and we are not so different beneath the surface. And having a space to just allow that to come forward, I think is so important for people, particularly now that it's so easy to operate superficially through the internet. We can have the facade of relationship and the facade of connection, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And that's where there really is a distinction or a growth, and it's measurable in the even though we have social media, an unprecedented ability to connect easily, we are also the most separate and most alone that we've ever been. Our kids, at least. And they're not necessarily developing the skills to go deeper in relationships. They're just developing the skills to have more. It's a quantity versus quality issue, I think. And when we don't have to reach each other face to face, it's much more easy to hide.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. A lot of really, I think, important things that I definitely have experienced, and I think everyone's experienced, but you're spot on in terms of the younger generation. So my girlfriend, she teaches middle school science, and so deals with a lot of those challenges, and just all of the way that kids interact, and especially right now, and they're still in sort of a weird limbo where they're not quite back in person. So still just the challenges that especially teenagers and preteens and kids are facing is just really, really tough. And it goes to adults as well, but especially in your formative years, though, when you're still developing and figuring out who you are, I think that's, the screen hides so much.
Yeah. I think there's something to forcing proximity upon people. Here's what I mean. Years ago, is back in, I think, 2011 or something like that. I went in an RV around half the country with my wife and kids. And I remember traveling along that time that about 2 weeks in, or up to the 2 week mark, the pressure of being in this one location with the one car, one RV for most of the time, you don't have much alone time. The pressure became greater and greater and greater and greater and greater. And then right around the 2 week mark, it's almost like the dam broke. And a lot of this pressure was released. We became acclimated to one another in a way that we had not been acclimated to one another before, despite, having lived with each other for many years. That occurred also when we went away again for an extended period of time in an RV. And each of us felt it in our own ways, from older to younger.
Yeah.
And I think that part of what we see in relationship building is proximity or lack of proximity when we can do it all online, because when that pressure increases to the point where we have to resolve, this must be resolved because we're going to be stuck here together. And it turns out we can resolve things when we can easily separate, when we can easily move, distance, when we can easily shut the screen off, we can put you on blast, pop, 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 and then go. Then we exit, boop, and all of a sudden we relieve the pressure by just distance. And and then we have to, I believe we start the process all over again, only now with more misunderstanding. Yeah. Because we take whatever wasn't resolved from before, and we bring that back with us, or we never do, right? Yeah. And I think that is that's a disservice. That's so, while technology has brought us the ability to connect from around the world, you and I are doing this thing, it's also given us the ability to not build close relationships when the going gets too tough.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you think about, how our brains are wired, right? We seek pleasure, avoid pain, like at the most basic level. You're going to run away from those tough situations if that's the easier path than it is to resolve it. And technology, at least the way that we're using it, is more in that regard versus this, which is, I think, awesome that we're able to have this conversation. We've just met and we're getting into some deep stuff. And what's the likelihood that how many people are actually having these types of interactions and conversations online? Right. So how do you prioritize more of that connection building using the technology? Or as you said, when we're in person, how do you focus more on those in-person relationships? So.
Yeah, that's one of the things you brought out. You mentioned it just a little bit before, that one of the things you brought from your travels is this idea of it sounded to me like relationship maintenance, like paying attention to the people that are with you and being fully invested in that. And it also seems like piggybacks off of your stuff that you're doing with finances, because this idea of emotions, which drives our behavior, it fundamentally impacts something that's structural to our lives, which is finances. And I think that when finances get out of control, that equates to safety net gone. It's like safety's gone. And when safety's gone, now you have a real problem on your hands. And it all began with $1. And that seems to me that one of the real important reasons that you're doing what you're doing around financial literacy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think relationships can be super powerful in terms of helping us get to where we want to go, right? So if you think about the fitness industry, Weight Watchers, even if you look at what Peloton's done with their virtual high fives and riding with other people, when you use community and relationships in the right way, you can use it to overcome hard things, whether it's in finances or losing weight or whatever it is. But it's about being with those people that are also on that same kind of journey or have a relationship and connect with you in a way that they understand why you're doing what you're doing and can support you on that journey. And so that's how it's kind of tied to me with finances, and kind of what I'm applying is that aspect of relationships and social to help people achieve their goals. There's a stat that when you combine a regular weekly check-in with an accountability partner, you have a 95% higher likelihood of achieving your goal. Just regularly checking in with someone that's going to hold you accountable and cares about you. And you can almost double your likelihood of achieving, 95%. So it's like, there's all these ways that we can use connection and meaning to empower and enrich our lives. Yeah.
So what's the big topic that's on your mind for 2021 as you're coming out of this pandemic, which, from a financial literacy standpoint, really put people on check, and there's a global economy issue as well that, from a macro scale, but in your world, finances or otherwise, what's the big thing that's circling around for you?
Yeah, I think this pandemic has affected people in very different ways, right? If you were a highly skilled worker who could just quickly work from home, you probably saved a lot of money, you probably invested, and if you threw money at pretty much anything this past 12 months, you made money in the stock market, right? And then you've got the other side of the coin, people that were in service industry jobs and on unemployment and coming off of that, and in very different experiences. Maybe they haven't had to pay rent, and they're going to have to deal with that because they couldn't afford it. So we've just got all these just inequalities. And what I'm thinking about is, how is that all going to play out? How can we support the people that are already having success and continue to help them move towards their goals? But what about the rest of the people that were left behind? And do we have the right incentives, the right structure to help those people be successful? And quite frankly, my belief is that the way that the financial services industry is set up today, we don't. And how do we change that? And so that's really what I'm working on and building. And no sales pitches, so I'm not going to dive into that. But that's really what I'm focused on is how do we bring people up and help the people that need it the most.
Yeah, well, it's okay from a sales pitch standpoint. It's funny when I started this, it's been just the saying that I kept on there. We'll talk about anything. The only rules, no sales calls. And because I had this feeling, it was almost like I'm not sure if it was really a qualifier. It just went off my tongue because I made my first post on LinkedIn, and I was doing quite a bit on LinkedIn at the time. And I get daily, several people a day just nosing in to be like, hey, have you ever thought about such and such? It's like, you haven't looked at my profile at all. You have no idea. You're just an automated system. And so sometimes I've shot back, like, I know this is an automated system, but if you want to have a chat, here's here to talk to me. But it's from a sales pitch, you're not making a sales pitch. So you're totally fine. You're well within bounds. I'm not gonna. There's no virtual spanking that comes across the screen.
Well, that's good. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. I've started a tech company to solve that problem, and that's what we're doing. Is we're gamifying finance. It's called Ostrich, and that's what I'm working on. Getostrich.com. Getostrich.com.
Getostrich.com, like the bird.
Like the bird, yeah. Like the bird.
Like that.
That's it.
Okay, so you're gamifying finances. Call me intrigued. I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs. Talk to me. What are you doing?
Yeah, so I alluded to the social accountability, but that's what we're doing. Is we're taking that social aspect and applying it to finances. So financial challenges that are aligned with people's goals. So if I've got a lot of student loan debt, then I might join a challenge with other people that are in student loan debt and have that accountability, that gamified experience of making progress towards my goals.
Like peer groups.
Peer groups, essentially. Yeah, exactly. And so that's what we're doing. We're not linking to bank accounts because, going back to the incentives piece, I think as soon as a company starts to either have you put money onto their platform, or they link to your bank accounts, their incentives now are no longer aligned with yours, right? So that's like our nuanced approach to it is making it social, but still keeping the gamification as a way to keep privacy, because not everyone's comfortable talking about finances. But if you're in a group of other peers, no one needs to know the exact amounts or things like that, but you can use gamification to say, hey, I'm making progress towards my goals, while you, Jason, are also making progress toward yours, and we can support each other in that.
So give me a practical example of what sort of gamification you are employing for a person who, let's say, has a lot of student loan debt. Like you said, you're in a peer group of other people who've had a lot of student loan debt. How do you get better at this?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. I mentioned earlier that my girlfriend's a New York City teacher. So one of the first challenges that we ran to kind of test the concept was a no spending challenge. And so people just picked one area of spending that they were unhappy with. And for all of fall, it's called Frugal Fall. They just cut it out. And everyone had different things that they were trying to cut back on or cut out. And every day would come in and say, hey, did I spend on this or not? And it was just a simple poll and commenting. And it was just a lot of fun. People were having fun with it. We were manually doing leaderboards and gamifying it and giving out streaks and things like that. And people were making better financial decisions in other areas of their life as well. And that's when it was like, okay, there's something more to this. And so that's an example of one of the challenges, but we've got challenges across various parts of finance. So debt pay down, investing, giving, even just checking your accounts regularly so you know where you are. And that's part of where not linking to accounts allows us to focus more on what's important to you versus saying you should save more because that's all we can do on our app.
Okay, interesting. So how is this app funded?
So if you don't have
talking about it, I know we're live.
We've bootstrapped the business up to this point, and the way that we monetize is if you do sign up for an investing challenge and you don't have a brokerage account, we'll make a recommendation. And if you sign up for one of our preferred partners, then we get a sales commission essentially for that sign up. So it could be a couple bucks. But we also recommend products that we just like that we don't get paid for. So that's how we monetize. And long-term, we're looking to partner with financial services companies that want to better engage their customers or roll this out internally with their employees. That's what we're building, and focused on trying to improve financial wellness through Ostrich. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Why Ostrich?
The name, we came up with the name at a birthday party, a friend's birthday party. My co-founder, we were trying to come up with names and doing terrible things like, what if we do Fin Lit, or looking at URL names, really struggling to find one that stuck. And he happened to be wearing a shirt that had ostriches all over it. And I looked at his shirt and I was like, Ostrich, that could work. Ostrich. Okay, rich is in the root word. We're helping people get their heads out of the sand and actually take control of their financial lives, helping people build a strong nest egg. All right, this could work. And so that's how we landed on Ostrich. And no one had used Ostrich for a financial app. There is a random game, I think, on Android that was popular for a while called Ostriches Among Us, but I think we can differentiate ourselves from that game enough. So
yeah, probably safe.
So that's how we landed on Ostrich.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So from Florida to Thailand to New York, Florida, back to New York, to running a financial services company or financial. What are you calling yourself? It's not really financial services. What is it? Yeah,
we still say fintech because it kind of makes us not have to say exactly what we are, but it's probably more like wellness education is how I'd bucket us.
Financial wellness. I like that.
So yeah,
that's a good term. Everybody's into wellness nowadays too.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, it's definitely, there's interesting things going on with gamification right now. Like if you look at the Robin Hood's under fire, and there's the congressional testimony that happened, but they're using gamification in order to get people to trade more, which is a little different. So, just kind of like how we talked about technology, right? For connecting with people, you can use it to disengage or leave hateful comments or create conflict, or you can use it the way that we're using it to connect with people. So it's all about the application of how you use the technology. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, we're coming up at the end of our time here. Where do people, if they want to have a continued conversation with you about what you do, should they go to Get Ostrich, or should they, where do they head to get you?
Yeah, you can go to getostrich.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search William Glass and Ostrich and I'll pop up. Or feel free to shoot me an email. It's just my first name at getostrich.com.
Cool, man. Well, this is great. Any, as we're closed down here, any other thoughts on your mind that you want to impart to people?
If you were to sing a karaoke song with me right now, what would it be? I'm not saying we're going to do it. I'm just curious. Okay, what would your selection be?
Well, my go-to is Butterfly by Jason Mraz.
Okay. That's a good one.
But yeah, last night I was walking around and what's the song? I see trees of green, red roses too. I don't know.
Wonderful world. Yeah, Louis
Armstrong. What a wonderful world. I was singing that one walking around in the kitchen last night.
I like that.
It was just on my mind, and I was like, I don't know. It was just, I was in a good mood of just sweetness in the air.
I like that. I think that's a good one to go out on. What a wonderful world.
Well, if I had it ready to go, darn it, that would have been perfect.
If only we would have coordinated ahead of time. No, I'm kidding.
I know, right? Gosh darn it. Live shows. Well, William, it's been great to get to know you. I appreciate you and what you do. It sounds really fantastic. To all of our viewers and listeners, Coffee with Humans is candid live conversations between strangers who become friends, making the world a better place. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, William.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you having me on.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.